The invitation to the annual Sullivan family reunion sat on my desk, its gold-embossed lettering catching the morning light streaming through my penthouse windows. 15 years of carefully maintained deception were about to end, and oddly enough, it wasn't even my choice. I picked up my phone and reread the email that had triggered everything. Forbes 30 under 40, the new face of digital art. Sophia Sullivan's NFT empire reaches $3.8 billion valuation. The article would be published tomorrow, just 2 days before the family reunion. My carefully constructed facade was about to shatter, and there was nothing I could do about it. "Miss Sullivan?" My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your brother Marcus is on line 1. Again." Of course he was. He'd been calling nonstop since the press release went out to major publications. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Hello, Marcus." "What the hell, Sophia?" He didn't bother with pleasantries. "I just got a call from Business Insider asking for a comment about my billionaire sister. Want to explain that?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. "I guess you'll have to wait for the article like everyone else." "Cut the crap," he snapped. "All these years, you've been letting us think you were barely getting by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you." I couldn't help but laugh. "Worried? Is that what you call it?" The constant lectures about getting a real job. The snide comments about how I'm wasting my potential. They were trying to help. No, they were trying to control me. Just like they tried to control you, and you let them. Silence fell on the other end of the line. Marcus had always been the good child, following our parents' carefully planned path. Business school, MBA, joining our father's investment firm. The golden son who never strayed from the script. Just tell me one thing," he finally said. "How long? How long have you been hiding this?" I stood up and walked to the window, watching a private helicopter land on a nearby building's helipad. My helicopter, actually. One of 3 I owned. Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? When you first started with your digital art nonsense. That was, he paused, calculating. 15 years ago. That's right. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my finance degree to doodle on computers, as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $50,000. 50,000? Back then? And 6 months later, I sold another for $200,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million. I could almost hear him doing the math in his head. But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Honda until last year. I never borrowed money from them, Marcus. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused, loudly and repeatedly. The Honda was a choice, not a necessity. Just like this penthouse was a choice. And the private jet, and everything else I kept hidden from all of you. Private jet. His voice cracked. Jesus, Sophia. How rich are you exactly? I smiled, remembering all the family dinners where they treated me like the poor relative. The way our younger sister Olivia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone knew she was helping out her struggling artist sister. The Forbes article will say $3.8 billion, but that's a conservative estimate. The real number is closer to 5. The sound Marcus made was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I continued. "I have a board meeting to attend. Oh, and Marcus? I'll see you at the family reunion. I'm thinking of making quite an entrance." I hung up before he could respond and pressed the intercom. Sarah, is everything set for the reunion? Yes, Miss Sullivan. The jet is fueled and ready. The car service is arranged for all family members to be picked up in Rolls-Royces. The venue has been updated to the private island as requested, and the NDAs have been prepared for all staff. Perfect. I picked up the reunion invitation again. For 15 years, I'd played the role they expected, the artistic black sheep who couldn't handle the real world, the daughter who needed constant reminders about financial responsibility, the sister who was pitied and patronized at every family gathering. But not this time. My phone buzzed with a text from my youngest sister Olivia. OMG Soph, please tell me this Forbes thing is a joke. What's going on? I left it unanswered. Olivia, who never failed to mention her six-figure salary at every family gathering. Olivia, who loved to reminisce about how she'd made it, while her big sister was still finding herself. The intercom buzzed again. Miss Sullivan, your parents are both on the line. Tell them I'm in a meeting. I checked my watch. And Sarah, call the helipad. I think I'll take the chopper to the board meeting today. As I gathered my things, my mind wandered back to the day that started it all. The day I decided to hide my success from my family. 15 years earlier. Digital art isn't real art, Sophia. My father's voice boomed across the dinner table. And this NFT nonsense? It's a fad, a scam. No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer. I sat there, 22 years old, fresh out of college, trying to explain my vision to my family. The same family that had paid for an Ivy League finance degree they expected me to use at my father's firm. Actually, Dad, I just sold my first collection for. Enough. He cut me off. I don't want to hear about your little hobby. Either you come work for the firm like we planned, or you're on your own. No more support, no more safety net. My mother reached across the table, patting my hand condescendingly. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. You need stability, a real career. I looked around the table at their faces, my father's disappointment, my mother's concerned frown, Marcus's smug smile, Olivia's barely concealed disdain. That was the moment I made my decision. I wouldn't tell them about the $50,000 sale, or the 3 galleries that wanted to represent me, or the tech companies reaching out about collaborations. You're right, I said, standing up. I need to figure this out on my own. 2 weeks later, I moved into the smallest, cheapest studio apartment I could find in Brooklyn. My family assumed I was struggling, living on my savings, too proud to admit defeat. In reality, I was building an empire. The first year was intense. I worked 18-hour days, developing my artistic style, learning about blockchain technology, building connections in the crypto art world. My first major collection, Digital Dreams in Binary, sold out in hours, bringing in $1.2 million. I took that money and invested it back into the business, hiring developers, creating new platforms for artists, innovating in ways the traditional art world couldn't imagine. But every time I visited home, I drove my old Honda, wore simple clothes, lived the part of the struggling artist. At least let me help with your rent, my mother would offer, while my father shook his head in disappointment. No thanks, Mom. I'm doing fine. And I was, more than fine. By the end of that first year, my net worth had hit $10 million. By year 3, $100 million. But to my family, I was still just Sophia, the dreamer who couldn't face reality. Now, 15 years later, as I stepped into my private helicopter, I thought about how it had all spiraled into something bigger than I'd intended. The little deception had become a massive secret, and in 2 days, everything would change. My phone buzzed again. A message from my father. "We need to talk now." I smiled and turned off the phone. They'd have to wait for the reunion. After 15 years of hearing about my failures, they were about to learn about my success. And I was going to make sure it was a revelation they'd never forget. The Forbes article dropped at exactly 6:00 a.m. Eastern Time. I was already awake, sipping coffee in my home office, watching the chaos unfold on my multiple screens. Digital art revolutionary. How Sophia Sullivan built a multi-billion-dollar empire in secret. The headline was accompanied by a photo I'd specifically chosen for this moment. Me standing in front of my most successful NFT collection, wearing clothes that cost more than my sister Olivia's monthly salary. The article didn't just reveal my wealth. It detailed every success I'd hidden for 15 years. My phone exploded with notifications. First came the family group chat. "Olivia, is this for real? $3.8 billion? Marcus, I tried to warn you all yesterday. Mom, Sophia, please answer your phone. Dad, this must be some kind of mistake. Aunt Patricia, just saw the article. Is our Sophia the Sophia Sullivan?" I muted the chat and pulled up my emails. Hundreds of interview requests from major news outlets, investment opportunities, speaking engagements. But one email caught my eye. From my father's business partner, Albert Chen. "Sophia, I believe we need to discuss potential synergies between Sullivan Investments and your digital art platforms. Your father may have mentioned some concerns, but I assure you we can be quite flexible." I couldn't help but laugh. 3 years ago, I'd approached their firm about a partnership. Albert had personally shown me the door, saying they didn't deal in internet pictures. My intercom buzzed. "Miss Sullivan, your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent." I checked the security feed. There was my mother, Alina Sullivan, still perfectly put together in her designer suit, but with an unfamiliar wildness in her eyes as she argued with the security guard. "Let her up," I sighed. It was time to face at least one member of my family. The private elevator opened directly into my penthouse. My mother stepped out, then froze, taking in her surroundings. The vast open space, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the original Basquiat on the wall that probably cost more than their house. "Sophia," she breathed, her voice unsteady. "What? What is all this?" "This is my home, Mom. The real one, not the small apartment I keep for family visits." She walked to the window, her heel clicks echoing on the marble floor. "How long have you? How did you?" 15 years, I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Since the day Dad said my digital art would never amount to anything." She turned, her face a mixture of confusion and hurt. "But you struggled. We saw it. The tiny apartment, the old car, borrowing money for rent." "I never borrowed money." I corrected her. "I asked you and Dad to invest in my company. There's a difference. And everything else, the apartment, the car, that was all just theater." "Theater?" Her voice rose. "You've been lying to us for 15 years. "No, Mom. I just let you see what you wanted to see. You all were so convinced I was failing that you never bothered to look closer." She sank into one of my Italian leather chairs, looking suddenly old. "Does anyone else know? In the family?" "No one." "Well, Marcus found out yesterday when the press release went out. I suppose he tried to warn you. She nodded weakly. He called, but your father was sure it was a mistake. Some other Sophia Sullivan. I walked to my desk and pulled out a file. Here's something that might interest you. The investment opportunity I tried to present to Dad 3 years ago. If he had invested the $1 million I asked for, his share would be worth roughly $100 million today. Her hands trembled as she took the file. He said you wanted a handout, that you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working out. And you believed him, just like you believed him about my struggling artist life. Tell me, Mom, in 15 years, did any of you ever actually come to one of my shows, check out my work, even Google my name? She couldn't meet my eyes. That's what I thought. I walked to the window, looking down at the city I now partially owned. The annual family reunion is in 2 days. I've made some changes to the arrangements. Changes? I bought out the entire resort where it was supposed to be held. Too public. Instead, everyone will be picked up by my private cars and taken to my jet. We'll be having the reunion on my island. Your island? In the Caribbean. I bought it last year when I closed my first billion-dollar deal. I turned to face her. And Mom? This time, I won't be the one sitting quietly while everyone talks about their successes. This time, I have some things to say. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands. Your father, when he sees all this, he'll finally have to admit that his little girl playing with computer pictures built something bigger than his entire family legacy. I smiled. And that's just the beginning. I walked her to the elevator, but before she could step in, I added one last thing. Oh, and Mom, that Bentley you've been dreaming about, but Dad says is too expensive. I bought 3 last month, just because I could. The elevator doors closed on her shocked face. As soon as she was gone, I called my assistant. Sarah, is everything ready for the reunion? Yes, Miss Sullivan. The island staff is prepared. The documentation packages have been assembled for each family member, showing exactly when they dismissed your investment opportunities and what those shares would be worth today. And the video presentation of your success timeline is ready. Perfect. I picked up my phone and finally replied to the family group chat with a single message. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided. Then I opened my laptop to check the market. The Forbes article had sent my company's stock soaring. Another billion added to my net worth before breakfast. I thought about my father, probably sitting in his office right now, trying to understand how his failing daughter had quietly become one of the richest people in the country. About my sister Olivia, who loved to brag about her 6-figure salary and vacation home in the Hamptons, realizing I could buy her entire life with what I made in interest each day. The reunion was going to be interesting, very interesting indeed. My phone buzzed again. A message from my father. We need to meet. Before the reunion. Family matters should be discussed privately. I typed back. Everything will be discussed at the reunion, Dad. After all, isn't that what family reunions are for? Sharing our successes? Then I called Sarah again. Contact the design team. I want the island's helipad repainted before the reunion. And make sure my name is visible from the air when they land. Already done, Ms. Sullivan. Anything else? I thought about 15 years of condescension, of pity, of being treated like the family failure. Yes, make sure the Forbes article is framed and hanging in every room of the island resort. I wanted to be the first thing they see, no matter where they turn. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window, successful, powerful, and finally ready to show my family exactly who I'd become while they were busy doubting me. The countdown to the reunion had begun. The day of the Sullivan family reunion dawned clear and bright. I stood on the tarmac of my private airfield, watching as 3 Rolls-Royces approached in formation. My family had arrived. The cars stopped, and the doors opened. First came my father, his usual commanding presence diminished somehow. My mother, still looking shaken from our meeting 2 days ago. Marcus, Olivia, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins followed, all wearing expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed resentment. And there, front and center, sat my gleaming private jet, with Sullivan Digital Empire emblazoned on its side in elegant lettering. "Welcome, everyone," I said, my voice carrying across the tarmac. I trust the ride was comfortable. Sophia, my father stepped forward, trying to regain his authoritative tone. "This is unnecessary. We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort." I smiled. "The resort was too public, Dad. Besides, I think it's time for some real family bonding. On my island." "Your island?" Olivia muttered, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "Of course you have an island." The flight was interesting, to say the least. As my family members settled into the luxurious cabin, their eyes darted everywhere, taking in the opulent details, the solid gold fixtures, the rare art pieces, the vintage champagne being served by an immaculately trained staff. Is that a real Picasso?" Aunt Patricia whispered, staring at the artwork mounted on a cabin wall. "Yes," I replied casually. "I bought it last year, along with a few others." My father cleared his throat. "Sophia, perhaps we should discuss." "We'll discuss everything when we land, Dad. For now, enjoy the flight. The champagne is particularly good. Cost more than your company's quarterly profits." He flinched. "Good." 2 hours later, we began our descent. Through the windows, my private island came into view. 300 acres of tropical paradise, with a state-of-the-art resort complex at its center. And there, visible from the air just as I'd planned, was my name in letters large enough to be seen from space. "SOPHA, Sullivan." As we landed, I heard Olivia gasp. The helipad was surrounded by displays showing my most successful NFT collections, each with their sale prices prominently displayed. Millions upon millions of dollars in digital art projected onto massive screens. "Welcome to Sullivan Island," I announced as we disembarked. "My own little piece of paradise." "Little?" Marcus choked out. The resort complex sprawled before us, a masterpiece of modern architecture seamlessly blended with natural beauty. "Everyone's rooms have been assigned," I continued. "You'll find some reading material waiting for you. I suggest you review it before dinner." The reading material was carefully curated for each family member. For my father, documentation of every investment opportunity of mine he dismissed, along with current valuations. For Olivia, a comparison of her annual salary versus what I made in interest each day. For Marcus, details of how his firm had lost millions by refusing to work with my company. I gave them an hour to settle in and digest the information. Then I had them summoned to the main dining room. The room was a masterpiece of design, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A massive table dominated the space, each place setting probably worth more than most people's cars. And on every wall, that Forbes article, beautifully framed. My family filed in slowly, looking shell-shocked. They changed for dinner, but even their expensive clothes looked somehow inadequate in these surroundings. Please sit. I gestured to the table. We have a lot to discuss. Safia, my father began as soon as everyone was seated. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're surprised. Surprised? I laughed softly. That's an interesting word choice. Not angry that I deceived you. Not hurt that I hid my success. Just surprised. We didn't know, my mother said quietly. You didn't want to know, I corrected her. Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I offered investment opportunities, you dismissed them. You were so convinced I was failing that you couldn't see my success, even when it was right in front of you. But the apartment, Olivia interjected. The old car. All those times you let me pay for dinner because you thought I couldn't afford it. I finished for her. Did you enjoy that, Olivia? Playing the successful sister. Making sure everyone knew you were helping out poor, struggling Sophia? She had the grace to look ashamed. Let me show you something, I said, pressing a button. Screens descended from the ceiling, displaying a timeline of my success alongside their dismissive comments over the years. 2008. Digital art isn't real art. Dad, my first collection sells for $50,000. 2010. When are you going to get a real job? Mom, company valuation hits $10 million. 2015. At least I can afford to help my sister out. Olivia, net worth passes $500 million. 2020. We don't invest in internet pictures. Dad's firm company valuation reaches $1 billion. Every doubt, every dismissal, every condescending comment, I said quietly. I remembered them all. And with each one, I built something bigger. Why? My father's voice cracked. Why hide it? Because you needed to learn something. All of you did. Success doesn't look just one way. Innovation doesn't follow your predetermined path. And sometimes, the child you wrote off as a failure might just be the one who succeeds beyond your wildest dreams. I stood up, walking to the window. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the secrecy. Not pretending to struggle. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity while dismissing true innovation. Mediocrity? Marcus bristled. Yes, mediocrity. You followed Dad's safe path, Marcus. Got the job he wanted you to get. Made the safe investments. And you, I turned to Olivia. You bragged about your 6-figure salary while I was making that much in minutes. That's enough. My father stood up. You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? No, Dad. What I want is for you to understand. Really understand. This, I gestured to the luxury around us, isn't about money. It's about vision. The vision you couldn't see because you were too busy clinging to the past. I pressed another button, and new images appeared on the screens. My latest project, a revolutionary platform that would transform how digital art was created, bought, and sold. This launches next month, I said. Conservative estimates put its value at $10 billion. I'm showing you this because for once, I want you to see what I'm building before it happens. No more dismissing it. No more doubting. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Finally, my mother spoke. We're proud of you, Safia. We should have been proud all along. Thank you, Mom. But I didn't do this for your pride. I did it because it was my dream, my vision. And now, I smiled. It's my empire. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now we have dinner. As a family. But this time, we'll do it my way. No more pretending. No more hiding. And tomorrow, we'll tour the island, and I'll show you exactly what your daughter, sister, and niece has built while you weren't paying attention. I raised my glass. To the truth. Finally. They raised their glasses, looking somewhat dazed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of gourmet food, fine wine, and gradually thawing conversations. My family was beginning to see me. Really see me, for the first time in 15 years. As they retired to their rooms that night, I stayed in the dining room, looking out at the moonlit ocean. My assistant Sarah appeared at my side. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. The big reveal. I thought about the looks on their faces, the shock, the realization, the gradual understanding. Yes, I said, but not for the reasons I expected. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about finally being free to be completely myself. And tomorrow, I smiled. Tomorrow, we show them the future. Their safe, predictable world of traditional investments and conventional success is over. It's time for them to understand that the daughter they wrote off as a dreamer wasn't just dreaming. She was building a new world while they weren't looking. Later that night, I found a note that had been slipped under my door, in my father's handwriting. I was wrong, not just about the business, but about everything. You didn't just succeed. You revolutionized an entire industry. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Dad. I placed the note in a frame, right next to my first NFT sale receipt for $50,000. A reminder of where I started and how far I'd come. The next morning, as I watched my family gather for breakfast, their attitudes subtly changed. I realized something important. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in the revealing of success, but in the quiet knowledge that you built something extraordinary while everyone else was busy doubting you. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Sullivan Digital Empire announces revolutionary new platform. The future was calling, and this time, my family would watch it unfold in real time. No more hiding, no more pretending, just success on my terms.